So I'm very excited to introduce and chair the session of the panel discussion, where I'll be introducing the speakers now. I'd like to introduce two sanctuary scholars and two senior leaders from two different universities who will speak more about the impact of the sanctuary scholarship programs and what this impact has meant for them and their institutions. So to introduce the panels, firstly, we will hear from Caroline McDonald. Caroline is the Director of Access and Engagement at Birkbeck, University of London. She has been working in the field of adult education for nearly 20 years. Across the community sector, local authorities, further and higher education, she has delivered on large scale of projects and influenced policy and practices directly impacting the access, progression, and the success of mature learners from disadvantaged backgrounds. In recent years, this has led to her co-establishing the Compass Project, which is an award-winning program focused on providing higher education to asylum seekers and broader support for other forced migrant students at Birkbeck, University of London. Then we will hear from Daniel Mutanda. Daniel is a Sanctuary Award recipient and a graduate of the University of Winchester. As an undergraduate student, he was a student ambassador. He helped set up STAR Group and he became a member of the National Universities of Sanctuary Steering Group. He has since completed a master's degree from the University of Warwick, where he was a fundraiser for the UNICEF on Campus Society, a volunteer at STAR Conversation Club, and an advisor to Warwick's University of Sanctuary Steering Group. Currently, Daniel is a STAR Equal Access activist in the Equal Access Network, where he is working to connect students from refugee and asylum-seeking backgrounds across the UK, along with other students with lived experience. He is also now a full-time research assistant, research assistant in an NHS mental health trust, and he is a member of the British Psychological Society. And after Daniel, we will hear from the second senior leader, who is Professor Richard Follett. Richard is Associate Vice President at the University of Sussex in Brighton. He is responsible for developing, coordinating, and driving the university's internationalization strategy, and he provides leadership to Sussex's international activities worldwide. Richard is chair of Universities UK Africa Network, representing over 140 UK universities globally, and serves on the International Steering Committee of the Association of Commonwealth Universities, Higher Education, and SDG Network. Richard is also a professor of American history and a specialist on the history of US race relations. Last but certainly not least, we will be hearing from the second Sanctuary Award recipient, Merwa Zain. Merwa is a refugee and a student at the University of Edinburgh, and she is also an alumna of the Compass program at Birkbeck. She has worked with multiple organizations to advocate and campaign for asylum seekers and refugee rights in the UK, including the right to access higher education. She is now training to become a nurse while continuing her work in advocacy for human rights in general, and especially the rights of forced migrants. So we're delighted to have you all speak today, and I would like to start by inviting Caroline to start the discussion, please. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Maria. And hi, everybody. Hello. Lovely to see some familiar faces and some new faces and share the panel today with a great group of people. As Mariam said, I'm Caroline McDonald from Birkbeck. My task part of today, in the 5 minutes I've got with you, is talk a little bit about our experience at Birkbeck in the establishment of Compass, and about how it's actually touched several corners of the institution, and how actually taking on board this type of work with forced migrants in particular, I think has really elevated Birkbeck's mission, which is a 200-year-old mission around people who are working and mature, into the 21st century, actually, and really changed us institutionally, both in terms of our student demographic, the way we raise our money at Birkbeck in philanthropic approaches, but also how we have strategically embedded our work around Compass, whether it be the APP, the Access and Participation Plan with the OFS, or whether it be how we communicate with governors and stakeholders and policy leads on this particular area. So I want to come at this from an angle which is around positivity, and I think hopefully giving you a sense about the way in which you can approach taking on a piece of work like this institutionally and convincing your internal colleagues to support it as well. As Leslie mentioned earlier on, Compass started back in 2017, and actually it was one of the first real genuine ground up initiatives we had at Birkbeck. It came from our academic community. It came from the people who work within Birkbeck because of what was going on around the Syrian refugee crisis at the time. And it was really important that we tried to find a response to this that was reflected on Birkbeck, but was also, it was going to deliver on something that was really needed. So as we've already heard, some universities have already had long established sanctuary type scholarships in place. Many of that is predominantly offered to younger students, whereas at Birkbeck we have quite a mature profile. We also have a very different way to enabling students to come and study a degree at Birkbeck. We have quite entry-level degree programs, so you can start at Birkbeck pretty much with nothing and come in and build your way up and take your time and learn at a pace that enables you to be successful and progress. So we recognised that we were quite different to most of the universities in the sanctuary movement at the time, and we consulted with other partners as well externally who had better knowledge and better advice than us that we could then second guess. And I think what we recognised was that there was a lot of intention and a lot of desire to do work with this particular community, but there was just a lack of understanding as to how you can start really galvanising interest and support internally and externally around this. Some of the things that we certainly did find out in the early days was around money and trying to establish connections externally with our philanthropic community and take to them a project, a concept, which was around helping a community of students who were quite overlooked elsewhere and giving it a sort of a Birkbeck lens, so to speak, through the mature angle especially, and really try to convey to our donors that there was not a lot of this work going on elsewhere in the sector. There was a huge emerging and continuous need to support these students, and that there was also scope to improve policy, improve the narrative, improve the approach that the sector was taking around supporting these types of students as well. So we knew going into this, it was a long game. It wasn't a project. We call it a project, but I think Leslie and I knew from the day off, this was not going to be something we would be doing in 1 year. It would go on for some time. And I think that we were able to convey a passionate and compelling narrative to our donors, as well as our internal community, about the importance of this. I think what we were trying to do at the same time was connect it to the strategic imperatives of the college as well. So as most of you will know, we've got the Office for Students. It was OFFA back in the day, and they have been very good at recognising the fact that there are a diverse set of groups out there who need support and access into university, and that every university can play their part and play their role in that. And we were given sort of a space and a recognition to really try and bring on board other universities and other widening participation teams to explore and invest their time and energy in working with forced migrants more broadly. And I think that what's really made a difference is that the OFS, as a part of their access and participation plans, really do now quite clearly emphasise the need to do more work with forced migrants. And it's not just a narrow band of which we mean by that, it's quite a broad band now. And we've provided case studies and we've given them some briefings around how they can encourage universities to do that. My sense is that going forward, we actually don't need to keep continuing our internal community on this. I think it's actually trying to continue to reach prospective students and let them know that even during a pandemic, even when people are, facing such incredible hardships, even more so than ever before, we can still be relevant and present to anybody, whether it's doing a degree or maybe that's just exploring learning for the first time, where there's no judgment, there's no barriers, there's no money attached to this in the first instance. But I think it's just about opening doors and being present in our communities as institutions and trying to, I think, manifest that in a way that is mission critical to the institution that you are, but reflects the community in which we're based. And I think every university has a place and a part to play in how that emerges. As we know, it's more prevalent than ever before, but universities are incredible civic engagement hubs, and there's a hell of a lot more that we could do both individually and as a sector to address that, definitely going forward.
That's great. Thank you so much, Caroline. And I think it's so important what you said there at the end about opening doors and reflecting how welcoming you are to your community and as a university. And as Siobhan just kind of put in the chat, do feel free to ask any questions now in the chat or later on, or if you'd like to send Siobhan a direct message with your questions. So next, we would love to hear from Daniel. So over to you, Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Mariam. Thank you for inviting me to this event. It really is a privilege to speak to everyone today. And yes, I'll just begin straight away. I'll get straight into it. We've all watched the film. We have seen the impact that opportunities to sanctuary scholars can have on people. So I won't say many words on the value of dignity. I won't say many words on how the base value of sanctuary scholars and their right to education needs to be recognized by universities. Rather, I'll make two main points. First, I'll start by asking, similar to what Caroline was saying now, what are the characteristics of your university, your mission statement, or what are the things that you represent as an institution? Does this align with education for all? What does it look like? How can it look like? And for me, this translated to a sanctuary award at the University of Winchester. I was, like Mariam said earlier, I was awarded a scholarship to study at the University of Winchester, where I did a bachelor's degree in psychology. I became part of the student body. And for many people, their time at university will be the most eclectic days of their lives. And it is the university's responsibility to create spaces, to create cultures for the eclectic. Now, while I was studying while I was an undergraduate, I was different from my peers in that my status made sure of me being different in terms of access. But I was still part of sports teams. I played first team sports. I acted in a drama production. I started a society. All of these things were part of me being in that student body. And you'll forgive me if I borrow the words of St. Paul in saying, if the whole body wasn't eye, where would be the hearing? If all were hearing, where would be the smelling? Essentially, in these points, what I'm trying to say is the diversity of the student body is what enriches the student experience. My time at Winchester, being different, I was able to give myself to the university, not only to enrich my life and my time at the university, but also to make an impact with my peers. My second main point is the value of experts by experience to universities themselves. Many universities are constantly researching or trying to learn about sanctuary, and I would argue that having sanctuary scholars adds a greater wealth of expertise. When I was studying at Winchester, I was a student ambassador. I worked in widening participation, not only with people that were seeking sanctuary, but also with care leavers, loads of local children that were trying to overcome their disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue higher education. I was not just put in a box. I was able to make an impact on so many other people's lives. Winchester gave to me, and I was able to give back to them, but not only just to the university, but also to the local communities. After graduating, I moved to the University of Warwick, and because of the previous work that I'd done at Winchester, I was invited to become part of their University Sanctuary Working Group. And that gave me an opportunity to be able to influence their strategic direction, to make an impact on the policies they make as a university, to become more welcoming of people from all types of different backgrounds. I was a bridge between the university staff and the student body. Of course, before Miriam mentioned that I've been involved in various societies, STAR, UNICEF on campus. Me having a position at the table meant I was able to make sure the student voice was represented in the spaces where decisions were made. The impact I made at my universities translated to a restructuring, in a sense, that improved in a sort of feedback loop. They poured into me, I poured back into them. And that's the main takeaway I would share with everyone today. What you put into a Sanctuary Scholar is the value they add back to your university. And I can see I've got a 1-minute warning, so I think based on all I've said there, I'll stop there, and I'll really welcome any questions when we arrive to the Q&A session. And just thank you again for inviting me to speak.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you so much, Daniel. And I'm sure everyone thought it was just as powerful as I did, especially what you mentioned about enriching university with your wealth of experience. And I think this leads us really nicely into what Richard will be speaking to us about the university responsibility from a leadership perspective. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you to fellow speakers and to everybody who's joined us today. I'd like to reflect on our learnings and our journey with the University of Sanctuary. And unlike my colleagues from Birkbeck, University of London, who've been part of the Sanctuary process for a long time, we're relatively new members. Indeed, we were awarded Sanctuary status back in May 2020. But as a university, Sussex staff and students have a long history of supporting and raising awareness of those seeking sanctuary, particularly through our research, community engagement, and social campaigning. And the university's strategy for 2025, which was framed over the last few years, is called A Better University for a Better World. And that sense of really being an active university, an agent in its own right, rather than just having our researchers be active participants. We really wanted to place the university as a key agent, as a way to help young men like Daniel, who's just spoken to us, to really develop in the very, very best they possibly can, and to widen the access of education to the world. Well, at the heart of that strategy for 2025 are our values, the values of kindness, integrity, inclusion, collaboration, and courage, with a particular commitment to delivering that in community engagement. And that's a very key part of us. So as a University of Sanctuary, we were really keen to bring together a whole strand of work that was already in process, but also to develop some new commitments that will further enable us and help us foster a culture of awareness and inclusivity, I think. Well, the university has made an ongoing commitment to the Article 26 scholarship scheme and was one of the first signatories of a commitment by UK higher education institutions to increase refugee access to education. Alongside this, we've also signed a global statement of support coordinated by the UN Refugee Committee, the UNHCR. But at the heart of our educational vision is a commitment to contribute to the democratic process and inspire our citizens to be active citizens in their own communities. As such, we're very proud to stand with organisations around the world, such as the University and Cities of Sanctuary movement, that share our values that we've cherished since our founding. We were the first British university to offer scholarships to victims of apartheid in 1973 through our Mandela Scholarship Programme, and we remain passionately committed to social, racial justice and inclusion. We're delighted to host almost 1/3 of the UK Chevening scholars from Afghanistan. And in the last month, we've worked across government departments, CARA, the City of Sanctuary, and local communities to welcome these students and other displaced families to our wider community. Our existing work lies fundamentally in scholarships, and we've referred to the Article 26 scholarship that many of your students will be interested in receiving or have in your own universities. But that scholarship program doesn't stand alone. We have a rolling program of 50 scholarships for Syrian refugees in particular. And of course, we have the CARA scholarships as well. We deliver a whole range of research projects with policy impact. Indeed, our recent CARA scholar is working currently on a project on CARA's Syria program to support food security in conflict-afflicted states. And our widening participation team are working to deliver across the university initiatives that embed and develop and widen our understanding of the needs of displaced students, of the needs of refugee students, and be able to work more proactively as a consequence with City of Sanctuary organisations. So beyond that research commitment, we're also working in and across community events and support, from the annual Migrant Lives Matter events, the Sanctuary on Sea, which is our local Brighton and Hove City of Sanctuary group, and also campaigning and awareness raising through the student star groups and other initiatives. Delighted to comment or answer any further questions in the Q&A. But I think for us, in a closing observation, for us, the University of Sanctuary status is very critical to our identity as a university. But what it's been able to do is reinforce patterns and give focus to a commitment across the university to support displaced students, refugee students, and to ensure that displaced stateless students under our Article 26 scholarship scheme, and indeed the current Afghan recovery scheme, are able to deliver for our student communities and beyond. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. Again, so important to link in with the values of the university, and taking a whole university approach, especially about what you mentioned around the needs of the students in terms of support, events, linking in with communities, and campaigning both in the community and nationally. And I think that's something that Merwa would also like to touch on in terms of the support and the participation throughout that university experience. So we'd love to hear from you as well, Merwa. Over to you.
Thank you, Mariam, and thanks to everyone who's took the time to be here. My name is Merwa Zan, and I've been introduced. But so I just wanted to bring in my own experience and think of how can we apply that on the wider lens, and in terms of enriching the university's life, but also making a bigger impact. So I'm just going to touch quickly on a few things that, through the Compass project at the University of London, Birkbeck, the University of London, things that I've seen have made an impact onto the university life, and then I'll move on to the wider society and maybe even internationally. So I think having City of Sanctuary, or providing these sort of scholarships to displaced forced migrants, has not only obviously the effect on them individually, but also it actually improves the university life and outlook in general. I'll just start with where everyone likes to start: money. So financially, this provides opportunities to actually speak and reach out to donors and sponsors that might have interest in this area of work and humanitarian work. So that could improve. And also it can provide opportunities to work nationally and internationally with different organizations, which could allow access to funding, extra funding for the university. But it can also make the university culturally and generally attractive to international students, which we know pay, especially in the UK. So that could be financially very helpful to the university. But I am more of an idealistic person, so we'll go to the culture. Having a diverse university that has students from all backgrounds and all experiences, all walks of life, enriches the culture of the university itself. It allows for cultural exchange, things from food, dances, up to even diversity in academic work. So students who have got different experiences will be able to enrich that work that is done, especially in terms of research, advocacy and policy influencing, whether on an institutional level or even national or international level. this diversity of the experience can bring more diversity to the academic work. But I'll speak about what I know as someone who's interested in healthcare. We'll speak about improving the health in general nationally in the UK, but also internationally. We've gone through the pandemic, and I don't think we've gone through it. It was still there, and we've seen how the work of universities, like the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, have helped in overcoming some of the challenges presented by this pandemic. But even further, we have an epidemic of mental health, and having the students who are passionate, coming from personal experience, and I know that from my own personal experience, that just generally from my life, the work of a university can actually change that. I'm not going to talk about how we can provide safe spaces for all students from all backgrounds to actually feel valid and be able to improve their mental health, but even creating champions for mental health improvement that will go out in the world, will change policy. They will have first-hand experience, will give them empathetic outlook for how to change this mental health epidemic and actually turn it around. Universities, I've got my 1 minute warning. Universities are not there just for the 5 years period of a degree, but they're there to change the society in general. And what students can bring in with their experience in the university, they can refine it with the help of expertise and the expertise of academics and the student. They can refine it and make it into life-changing policies, life-changing, even just the film that you've seen, cultural projects, the amazing work of Anna Konik and Leslie Tobbs. These cultural projects, and they can change the minds of hundreds and millions, and hopefully we can build a more better world where everyone feels accepted and loved, and before you know it, one of us will be in a place where we can actually make decisions that can change the world and make it a better world. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Merwa. That's wonderful and really powerful and very important points to take into consideration for both the students and the universities offering the programs or the scholarships. And I see we've received really great questions now, and I would like to pass you on to Siobhan to take on some of the questions and see which member of the panel would like to answer them.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much, firstly, to the panelists for that excellent overview of the kind of mutually beneficial relationship that sanctuary scholars can have for a university. And I think you've captured so many of the varied and really rich benefits that sanctuary scholars can bring to an institution. I also just wanted to flag that a couple of questions are more kind of specific about the logistics of a scholarship. In 2 weeks' time, we have a workshop which will cover more of those kind of nuts and bolts questions. So if you are interested in more of the logistics of setting up a new scholarship, please do sign up. I've just put the link in the chat. But something just to start off with the panel, something that has come up in a couple of questions, and I know you've touched upon it already in your speeches, but it's about funding. So I wonder if we could just return to that. A lot of universities, of course, are stretched for funding at the moment. If somebody is at a university where they're simply hitting a brick wall and the leadership are saying there's no money for this scheme, what tips would you give to kind of initiate a conversation about funding a scheme like this? Perhaps if we start with Caroline, you've got experience of setting up a scholarship. Do you want to respond to that first?
Hiya. So from our perspective, the challenge really was about Well, there's slightly different things. You've got it's about trying to know who your sort of target audience is with your forced migrant community. So obviously, some of them may have refugee status, which means they can get access to student financial support to a certain extent. And then we obviously took a perspective which was specifically targeting asylum seekers who weren't entitled to any financial support at all, because we recognised they were much further down the line in terms of being able to get support and access to things. So we almost went for even the harder end, so to speak, of like trying to work with the community. And the first port of call for us was our development and alumni department, who are responsible for fundraising. Every university has one. I would say the vast majority, and hopefully Richie will agree, the vast majority of them are heavily linked to mission-related fundraising. So as well as teaching and learning, they may have research money as well that they look towards. And they do that in various ways. One is through alumni engagement. And we were definitely, we had a huge level of support from alumni at Birkbeck once they knew about the establishment of the project. And they were proactively approached by our development team. And we had communications go out. We had case studies being established. We did interviews. We did visits to prospective donors. And then alongside that, we had within the development team, we have people who make bids towards trusts and foundations as well. So again, at the time when we were first established, there weren't that many universities really actively seeking money in such a way. Most universities were using their existing scholarship money, which exists for lots of different types of categories of students, and just adding them onto that category of student, whereas we were actually going off to explore and develop money from original sources of funding. And so, you know, without our development team, we would have definitely found it a lot harder. But, you know, we had an example when we spoke to our alumni community. Our Vice Chancellor let us know about one day he came into the office and there was a brown envelope on the desk with no name on it. And he opened it up and it had £1,000 inside it. And it just said, for the Compass Project from an alumni. And that was it. And, you know, we've had extraordinary gifts from people. We've also had people who've given their time to the project if they can't give money as well. So I think for us, my first suggestion would definitely be about getting senior buy-in to the concept of taking this forward, because then what happens afterwards, it gives permission for other colleagues to join in and participate within the project as well. And that's when we then made ourselves a real nuisance to our development alumni team on top of that. Hope that helps.
That's extremely helpful. Yeah, I have definitely heard that at other institutions as well, that alumni are a great source of funding. So hopefully we'll all start getting brown envelopes like that soon. Leslie, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, absolutely, the fundraising has been crucial for all sorts of different things. The other factor that is worth everyone keeping in mind is that I think this is the case for most sanctuary scholarships, that the university itself will absorb some of the cost by waiving tuition fees. And so so don't hesitate to ask for that. That is an absolutely standard way of funding any kind of scholarship and bursary, is that they simply absorb those fees and don't charge them to the students. And in a program like Sanctuary Scholarships, it's not as if you're setting up a separate program. Normally, it's not a case of putting a group of people in a classroom and having to hire a teacher and pay for the classroom. It's much more that students are studying alongside other students across the university, and therefore that teaching is happening anyway, and the students are joining in with that. And so the tuition fee waiver seems, you know, there's a very reasonable kind of impetus for a request for that waiver based on that. It's kind of accounting, really, more than actual fundraising in that sense. But the fundraising is absolutely crucial for the extra support, the maintenance, the bursaries, also for staffing to support the program if it's a big program.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Unless any other panel members want to come in on that, I might move on to the next question. Yeah, so actually moving outside of funding, we've had a couple of questions about the non-financial support required for sanctuary scholars. So Daniel and Merwa, I wonder if you want to come in on this about, well, as Anna has just put it, what elements of support packages are the most beneficial outside of the financial support? What do you think should be prioritised?
I'm happy to come in. Is that okay, Danny? Okay. So this is just from a personal experience. I personally say the most beneficial, actually, if you ask me, the most benefit I got from the Compass project was not the finance of it, as much as it was the support we had from the amazing coordinator, the Compass project coordinator, and everyone that worked alongside. And some of them are here, the panelists, Leslie Tops, and even Anna Konik. It was amazing. This support we're talking about is having someone we can go to and talk. Students who are going through immigration changes have a lot of questions about how to write letters. Who do you think I can speak? Dealing with bureaucracy, mental health is a big thing. Not knowing what services we can access. Sometimes I even went to my coordinator with my accommodation sometimes, and even the transition when I got my status, my refugee status, the transition was very hard, and I went to my coordinator with these sort of questions. So I think because we have, well, everyone has a unique experience, but in terms of immigration and forced migration, we have that unique experience and dealing with different systems here in the UK. It's not easy to talk to someone who was just trained to generally deal with like other issues, other more mainstream issues. So having the coordinator definitely in the Compass project definitely made a difference. I have received funding before the Compass project, but I can say the Compass project was a life-changing moment for me, because I had to explore. I dealt with a lot more than just, oh, I need money to do my course. But no, I had support for my mental health. I've had support to move on actually to the next step, in terms of like applying for other courses. So I'm sorry, I'm going over time, but I would say definitely support for mental health and support for the next step, and just having someone that has a general understanding of the experience of forced migrants and how they can help.
Thank you so much, Merwa. And Daniel, did you want to share any brief thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just say I completely agree. With scholarship, it's not just a case of throwing money at students. There is a need for a member of staff, a face that knows the name of the Sanctuary Scholar. It's going to be them with them through the university experience. And yeah, I'd even encourage beyond the university experience, someone to check in with you. I think that those are the most important things to have in place.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, there's a couple more questions. I don't know if for the more specific ones, I think, Richard, you got a question about stateless students that you may have already answered in your speech. And the one about kind of if negotiating if students are unsuccessful, that might be something that we can pick up on in the follow-up workshop. Just before we finish, I just wanted to share, sadly we're running out of time very quickly, but I just wanted to end on a note of the kind of next steps that you might be thinking about, as hopefully you've been inspired by this conversation and will be taking this away to your own institutions. Just another question to respond to briefly about whether or not scholarships are competitive. I can respond to that. The answer is yes, they are very competitive, and there is certainly a need for more scholarships. So we would definitely encourage you to pursue that at your own institution. And some concrete things that you can do as a follow-up to this event. Firstly, thank you so much for coming, because being here is the first step and being engaged. As we've already talked about, there's a follow-up workshop in 2 weeks' time. If you're interested in hearing about the more nitty-gritty detail of setting up a sanctuary scholarship and direction to more resources to help you with that process, please come along. You will hopefully take this forward to your own widening participation teams or admissions teams at your university to find out a little bit more about current practices and to inquire about potential opportunities or barriers that need to be overcome within your institution. And then finally, do stay in touch. There is a whole community of universities with scholarships that you will be entering if your institution sets up a scholarship. If you'd like to get involved and to join a Slack workspace for scholarship staff, feel free to email me on equalaccess@starnetwork.org.uk. If you have any general questions or want to have a chat about setting up or expanding a scholarship, email me as well. And if you'd like to discuss Universities of Sanctuary more generally, you can get in touch with Mariam on mariam@uk.cityofsanctuary.org. And that brings us to our time, I think. So just to say thank you again so much to the panelists for joining us, to Anna Konik for producing such an excellent film. And please do share it widely and pass this on to your colleagues. If there are no final comments from the panelists or from Leslie or Mariam, then we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you everyone for joining. That was great.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.